I know this New South stuff because I work for Levine Museum of the New South, and I would love to have folks come down and see us in the Center City on 7th Street. We tell the story of the South since the Civil War. But today we're going to tell a story that's much older than that. We're going to tell the story of why we're sitting here in an old Presbyterian church. The folks that are telling the story are people that I've known for many years. I spent many years in the Triangle in Chapel Hill, and that's where my daughter was born. My daughter is now coming up on 20, and one of the first musicians that I could get her excited about to go out and see was a guy named David DiGiuseppe. She just loved that. I think she loved the name. She loved the fact he played the accordion, and the fact that he was an actual real grown-up elf. See if you can figure out which of these is David DiGiuseppe. He is somebody who's been a stalwart of the folk scene in Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, and we're so happy to get him over here. Rob Sharer is the other elf, and he is accomplished on many instruments, particularly the guitar, and has spent a lot of time learning that in Ireland. So we'll have some music from folks that really know what they're talking about. But the story about this Presbyterian church really starts in England with the Church of England. And the King of England thought everybody should be part of the Church of England. And there was a bunch of folks called Presbyterians who begged to differ. And those people, some of them were from Scotland. They went over to Ireland. There were folks from Ireland. They got together in Ulster in Northern Ireland. And pretty soon the land gave out. There was better farming over here in the New World. And so they came to Philadelphia, spent time there, and then they worked their way down the Great Wagon Road down what's now Interstate 81. And you can tell because all down Interstate 81 get off the highway and poke around those little red brick villages, and there are Presbyterian churches. And then when they came down to about Roanoke, they scootled over the mountains and ended up here in the Carolina Piedmont, where you'll notice there are a lot of old Presbyterian churches. And there were so many of them here among the early settlers back in the 1750s, 1760s, and 1770s that Presbyterians were thick on the ground to the extent they could disagree with each other. And so what we're in is not just a Presbyterian church, it's an Associated Reform Presbyterian church, which is a particularly southern offshoot of the Presbyterian church. And it is a very appropriate place to listen to the songs and the stories of Bound for Carolina. Make them welcome.
Thank you. I have to admit, I've never been called an elf before on stage in introduction. That was good. Well, you just told the whole story, so we're done. Good evening. Well, chicken crowing in the old cornfield, chicken crowing in the old cornfield, chicken crowing in the old cornfield down in North Carolina. Water bound, I can't get home. Water bound, I can't get home. Water bound, can't get home down in North Carolina. The old man's mad, I don't care. Old man's mad, I don't care. The old man's mad, I don't care. As long as I see his daughter, I'm water bound, I can't get home. Gonna see that one I love. Water bound, can't get home down in North Carolina. I'm Gonna see that one I love. Gonna see that one I love. Gonna see that one I love down in North Carolina. Waterbound can't get home. Waterbound can't get home. Waterbound can't get home down in North Carolina. Wow, well, thank you, and good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure and a treat to be in such a fine place here.
Hello.
Hi. So you know what you're in for, right? Or you think you know what you're in for. Okay. The English, the Welsh, Germans, Swiss-speaking Germans, Scandinavians, French Huguenots, Africans, Native Americans. They were people who were all part of the ethnic fabric of early North Carolina. And for this show, we're pretty much going to ignore them all and focus on the Scots-Irish, who, as you certainly now know after Tom's eloquent introduction, came into North Carolina. And we'll talk about kind of what they brought to the table. And I'll tell you a little bit about the Highland Scots. Their early settlements were along the upper Cape Fear Basin, starting in the early 1730s. A couple of major waves of migration, 1749, 1770. By the late 1700s, North Carolina claimed the highest population of Highlanders in all of North America. A couple of their early settlements, called Cross Creek and Campbellton, are now part of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And those Highlanders typically came from two places, the shires of Inverness and the shire of Argyll. And they would sail mostly directly from the from the Scottish coast directly to the port of Brunswick, North Carolina, down near Wilmington. The Lowland Scots took a much more circuitous route, both through distance and time. And it's estimated between 1715 and 1775, about 250,000 Lowland Scots had emigrated to America, and many of them ended up here in North Carolina. And by the early 1800s, though not a majority of the population, the Scots were the single largest ethnic group in North Carolina. And so it comes as no surprise that Scottish culture has a big impact on the roots of North Carolinian culture. And it can help explain how those old-time fiddle tunes that we started out with have their roots in music that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait.
Got you.
A couple of Scottish tunes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you. In the early 1700s, the Lowland Scots, who a century earlier had migrated from the lowland Scotland into Northern Ireland and Ulster, well, they found themselves once again on the move, or perhaps I should say on the run. In Northern Ireland, they were experiencing persecution, economic, political, religious, by the English, the ruling English in their Church of England. And they were also experiencing resentment from the native Irish population who they had displaced in their own settlements. But the winds of change were somewhat blowing in their favor. In the early 1700s, there was a lively seagoing trade with ships leaving the ports of the American colonies, and in the late summer, early fall, follow the trade winds up into Northern Ireland. And there they would bring cargo of flax for the linen industry. And in the spring, those same ships would follow the trade winds, this time going west, back to the colonies. And of course, the ship owners and captains on board those ships, they wouldn't want to sail back with empty ships with no cargo. And it became that the easiest cargo to take back was human passengers. The Scots-Irish, who were now living in Ulster, eager to leave their home and migrate to America. It was a hard journey. It took typically at that time 5 weeks to 2 months. And it's estimated that about 15% of the passengers never made it. And those ships would typically land in a place called Germantown, which today we know as Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, as we get into the 1720s, there had been such an influx of migrants into that area, the good farmland got taken up, and there was rising tensions with the native population. And so many of those settlers would come in then would just keep on moving. And some went west, and some came south. And those who came south came down via the Great Wagon Road through the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and starting in the 1730s into the Piedmont of North Carolina. And at that time, the Piedmont of North Carolina saw its first major wave of migration, of migrations and settlements. And they were the Scots-Irish, and alongside them, the Germans. Well, the Scottish and the Irish both have a long tradition of emigration songs. It seems more of them left than stayed. And we're going to sing one of those emigration songs.
Some of my people were Lowland Scots, and I've actually been over and seen a place where my great-grandfather, Robert Rohde, was a coal miner. He lived in what must have been just an awful little shack of a place, and my grandmother saw it standing. It's long since fallen down, but I was able to collect some slates from the place where the cottage had stood before they knocked it down. They used to have slate roofs over there that were made of slate. Not surprisingly, very interesting use of the material. Anyway, what they used to do is they used to drill a hole in the slates to put the nails in, so they're little squares of slate with a hole in them. And that's my only souvenir of my Lowland Scots ancestry. That and a couple of hangovers I managed to subject myself to while I was there. They didn't last like the slates do, though. From Derry Quay we sailed away on the 23rd of May. We were boarded by a pleasant crew bound for America. Fresh water then we did take on board, 10,000 gallons or more, in case we'd run short going to New York, far away from the Shamrock shore. So fare thee well, sweet Liza dear, and likewise to Derry town. And twice farewell to me comrade boys who dwell on that sainted ground. If fortune and ever should favor me, or I to have money in store, I'll come back and I'll wed the wee lassie I left on Paddy's green Shamrock shore. On the third day out, we were all seasick, not a man on board was free. We were all confined unto our bunks, with no one to pity poor me. No mother dear, nor father kind, to hold up my head when 'twas sore, which made me think more on the lassie I left on Paddy's green Shamrock shore. So it's fare thee well, sweet Liza dear, and likewise to Derry town. And twice farewell to me comrade boys who dwell on that sainted ground. If fortune that ever should favor me, or I to have a money in store, I'll come back and I'll wed the wee lassie I left on Paddy's green Shamrock shore. We safely reached the other side on 24 days. We were taken as passengers by a man and led round in 6 different ways. We each of us drank a parting glass in case we might never meet more. And we drank a health to old Ireland and Paddy's green Shamrock shore. So it's fare thee well, sweet Liza dear, and likewise to Derry town. And twice farewell to me comrade boys who dwell on that sainted ground. If fortune ever should favor me, or I to have money in store, I'll come back and I'll wed the wee lassie I left on Paddy's green Shamrock shore. I'll come back and I'll wed the wee lassie I left on Paddy's green Shamrock shore. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So it should come to as no surprise to you that the Scots who came here were pretty poor. They didn't have a lot of possessions. And when they came here, they didn't bring a lot of stuff with them. That's a little backdoor reference to something Bill Riley just said. Sorry if that went over your head. But what they did bring was up here.
I get it now. Sorry. This was way homers.
Sorry, that went out the door before. Anyway, what they did bring was, knowledge, how to farm, how to build a house. They brought their ways of worship, I guess in their arguments about that, too. As Tom was saying that, I was thinking, boy, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And they also brought with them their artistic traditions, their dance, their stories, and their songs, including their ballads. Now, a ballad is, in its simplest form, a story or narrative that's sung to a melody. And in the British tradition, the earliest ballads that we know of that have been recorded go back to the late 1300s. And the first collections of ballads start showing up in the 1600s, and since then there's been many, many collections of ballads. Ballads have been studied quite a bit. And I have to say, when I think about one of the real values of ballads as a body of literary work, when you study the themes and the narratives, when you study what the ballads are about, you get a real interesting insight into the non-literate layers of society. The people in the 14, 15, 1600s who didn't have the ability to write about their own history. Well, that history is told when you look at the values and the events that are portrayed in those ballads. And the ballads not only functioned as entertainment, but they also, they also functioned to disseminate news. And this is, of course, before the time of mass media and 24/7 negative political ads and things that I'm really tired of at this point. No, sorry.
Take your tablet, take your tablet. Deep breath.
It was a rough few months, I have to say. So we're going to share with you a British ballad. This comes from the borderlands between England and Scotland. And it tells a common story of a rich man's wife who runs off with a band of gypsies. We're going to sing one called the Raggle-Taggle Gypsy. But in fact, like any good ballad, there are many variants, many variations in both the tradition and the British tradition and other traditions. And so you'll find the same song, or at least the same storyline, with different words, different melody, even a different title. This one's called the Raggle-Taggle Gypsy.
Yeah. I'll just add one tiny little note to that, if I might. Irish music, you know, very, very popular. I'm sure everybody likes Irish music. Scottish music, a little more esoteric. Probably a bunch of people here like Scottish music. Does anybody like English folk music? Come on, put them up there. Don't lie. Anyway, me personally now, I love English folk music, and I'm not afraid to admit it, even to my Irish friends. But I'm going to play finger style when I accompany myself in this song, but I'm not going to play like good old North Carolina piedmont style alternating bass. This is more the British percussive style, like you might see Martin Simpson or Once Upon a Time Nick Jones or Martin Carthy or that whole, you know, those characters. A motley crew they are too. But an interesting thing about that is that style, this style that I'm about to perpetrate, is influenced very heavily by good old North Carolina, Virginia clawhammer banjo style. So, you know, it's like the style has gone back and forth across the ocean several times. And
the ping pong effect.
Yeah, we call it the ping pong effect. So, without any further ado,
Three gypsies came to our front door. Came they brave and boldly, oh, and one sang high and the other sang low. One sang a raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. It was upstairs, downstairs the lady went, put on a suit of leather, oh, and there came a cry from around the door. She's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. It was late last night when the Lord came in, inquiring for his lady, oh. The servant girl, she says to the Lord, she's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. Well, then saddle for me my milk-white steed, for my big horse is not speedy, oh, and I will ride till I seek my bride. She's away with the raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. Well, he rode east and he rode west. He rode north or south or so until he came to a wide open field. It was there he spied his lady, oh. Well, how can you leave your goose-feathered bed with a blanket strewn so comely, oh? And how can you leave your only wedded lord all for a raggle-taggle gypsy, oh? Well, what care I for my goose-feather bed with the blanket strewn so comely, oh? Tonight I lie in a wide open field in the arms of the raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. Oh, how can you leave your house and your land? How can you leave your money, oh? And how can you leave your only wedded lord all for a raggle-taggle gypsy, oh? Well, what care I for my house and my land? And what care I for my money, oh? I only need a kiss from a yellow gypsy's lips. I'm away with a raggle-taggle gypsy, oh. Thank you now.
We sometimes do a variant version of this song for school children. If there's any teachers out there, that's a big hint. I'll sometimes ask them if they've ever played the game. Some people call it telephone tag or gossip, where the teacher will whisper something to the first person in the room, and they'll tell the next person, and whisper to the next person. It goes all the way around the room, and then the last student gets to hear it, and they speak out what they heard, and what happens to that piece of information? It has changed. It seems to be a human phenomenon that as information goes from one person to another, it changes. And that's what happens with this folk music and the oral tradition, these ballads, instrumental pieces, as they go from person to person, place to place, time to time, they go through changes. And not surprisingly, those changes reflect the culture that the music is being sung or presented in. So you'd expect that these folk songs, these British, Scottish, Irish folk songs that came to America with the settlers, settled down here and they changed. You'd expect that. And in fact, that is what happened, with one very interesting caveat. In the early 1900s, a British folklorist named Cecil Sharp was roaming the British countryside collecting British ballads that he recognized were dying out because of the cultural shifts due to industrialization. Those folk songs, those ballads that were relevant to peasants who were farming were no longer relevant to people moving into cities working in factories. And Sharp recognized this phenomenon, and he would collect even fragments of pieces, of ballads. I mean, once a in an oral tradition before the days of recording devices. Think about it. Once a song that's being sung stops being sung, like a rare bird, it becomes extinct. It no longer exists. Now, in this country around the same time, a woman from Massachusetts named Olive Dame Campbell was working with people in the the southern Appalachian Mountains. And she recognized that the music that they were singing, the ballads and such, she recognized that their roots were English and Irish and Scottish. And Olive Dame Campbell was a very worldly woman, and she knew of the work of Cecil Sharp. And so she corresponded with him and talked him into coming to the Appalachian Mountains to collect and study the music here. And what he found was that the ballads that he was collecting back in the British Isles that were dying out were in fact very much alive and part of the culture and the fabric of the people in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. English folk songs of the southern Appalachian Mountains by Cecil Sharp and Olive Dame Campbell. The first of many volumes was published in 1917. And if this storyline sounds a little familiar to you, if you happen to be a moviegoer, it might, because it was the story behind the movie Songcatcher. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that. It came through. It didn't get grave reviews, but it was a mainstream movie for a number of years. Anybody see that film? If you did, good, a bunch of folks. So I'll just say, you know how they'll say the events in this depicted in this movie were based on real-life events. And that's kind of true, but in that movie, the romantic interest between Olive, Dame Campbell, and Cecil Sharp, sorry, didn't happen. Yeah, sorry. The truth is that Olive Dame Campbell was traveling around with her husband, John C. Campbell, when Cecil Sharp showed up. I don't know if anybody goes out to, you probably know I've heard of the John C. Campbell Folk School in Brasstown. It's a great place. If you've never been there, you should check it out. They do all kinds of classes on traditional North Carolina blacksmithing and crafts, etc., and they have music weeks. I've been on the staff there a few times. It's a really cool place. Well, it was actually founded by Olive Dame Campbell, and by that point, her husband, John Campbell, had died, which is who it's named after.
So Cecil Sharp was in with a chance.
Oh, so that's right, Cecil Sharp. He had it. But it wasn't. She just wasn't worth coming back to America for. So. Oh, sorry. All right. Maybe she was actually. She might have been. Oh dear, I'm in big trouble. Okay, so anyway, we're talking about ballads. Yeah, sorry. I'll sing you a ballad the way you might have heard it, the way Olive Dame Campbell and Cecil Sharp might have heard it. And in fact, I thought it'd be fun to juxtapose that Scottish version of the Raggle-Taggle Gypsy with a North Carolina version. And as I was saying earlier, the words change, the title changes. It's now called the Gypsy Davy, but the storyline is pretty much the same. It was late in the night when the squire came home, looking for his lady. The servant made a sure reply, she's away with the Gypsy Davy. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the Gypsy Davy. That's the chorus. Feel free to sing along when it comes around. Oh, go fetch me my milk-white steed. She's fast and then she's speedy. I'll ride all night till the break of day and overtake my lady. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the Gypsy Davy. He rode and he rode till he came to a town. He rode till he came to Barley, and there the tears rolled down his cheek, for there he spied his lady. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the Gypsy Davy. Oh, come, go back, my own true love. Oh, come, go back, my honey. I'll put you up in a chamber so high where the gypsies won't come near ye. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. I won't go back, my own true love, I won't go back, my honey. I wouldn't give the gypsy's kiss for all your land and money. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. Oh, how could you leave your house and land? How could you leave your baby? How could you leave your kind husband to roam with that gypsy Davy? Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. Well, it's I could leave my house and land, I could leave my baby, I could leave my kind husband to roam with the gypsy Davy. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. Oh, once I had a house and land, a feathered bed and money. But now I've come to an old straw mat, but the gypsies all around me. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. Rattle-tum the gypsy, gypsy, rattle-tum the gypsy Davy. Well, in addition to their ballads, the Scottish people also brought their instrumental tradition. I should say that a little bit about Scottish fiddling. It's got a few regional differences. There's what's known as the Highland and the West Coast style and the North Coast and East Coast style and the Shetland and the
West
Orkney
Coast
style.
represent.
Yeah. And the Lowlands style. But by and large, Scottish fiddling is pretty identifiable and distinguishable unto itself. And one of the interesting features of traditional Scottish fiddling through the years, and this is really one thing that makes it different from other traditions, is that a lot of the traditional players were actually studied classical musicians. You really don't find that in other traditions. And composers as well. Hence, the repertoire of Scottish fiddle tunes tends to be very virtuosic. And some of those influences, besides being from classical music, were also from the bagpipe.
Jeez, I thought there was one here for a second.
Yeah.
You scared me to death.
And I should ask you, here's your quiz. Besides the bagpipe, what are the other traditional instruments associated with Scotland? Anybody know? Or venture some guesses? No, not the dulcimer. I'll tell you about that a little later, actually. The harp, yeah, the harp, and also the fiddle.
What about the lagerphone?
Oh, the lagerphone.
That stick with the beer bottle caps nailed to it. See that at all?
They didn't have bottle caps back in the 1700s. I'm sorry.
Well, it had corks. It was a quiet instrument. Back then, it was a very sociable.
And it couldn't compete with the bagpipes, so it fell out of use. What are we doing here? We're going to play.
Hardly matters.
I don't know. I think we're going to play a Scottish fiddle tune. You want to do that? Well, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow a Scottish fiddle tune around. And we're going to play it. We'll start off playing it in a Scottish style.
Now, I should mention to you that this fiddle that you see before you, I'll talk in the vocal mic, this fiddle that you see before you, which is not mine, could be yours if you enter the raffle. It's going to be a raffle in about a month. And this is the big prize right here. So I'm going to play this fiddle to prove that it works. And any deficiencies that you detect, you may chalk up to the inexperience of the operator and not to the excellence of the instrument. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do I hear 300?
Raffle, not auction, David. Come on, let's go down. I don't want to. Sorry.
Ms. McLeod's reel.
Ready? Yep.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, that's Miss McLeod's reel. And Miss McLeod first shows up in a collection around the early 1800s by a great fiddler whose name was Neil Gow. And he attributed it to a Mr. McLeod from the Isle of Skye. And I should say that old girl, or that old gal, she got around. Miss McLeod's reel and other forms are found all over the place. In fact, those who care and collect such things claim that there's over 30 different titles to that tune and about a dozen distinguishable but related melodies. And it shouldn't surprise you that when a tune is played in a new area, it's not played the way it had been played. It's played in the style indigenous to that area. So what we're going to do is play a version of McLeod's reel from Ireland. And you'll hear it's pretty much the same melody, but boy, is it stylistically different. The ornaments, the instruments, everything is pretty different about it. So,
does anybody know what that is? That's right. What kind of flute? Irish flute, that's right. That's very exciting. Let's move on. No, if you don't know anything about you don't know anything about these things, it's made of wood. And yeah, that's pretty boring too, so we'll move right along. Anyway.
Wait, I might as well tell them about this. Everybody knows what this is, right? It's a tuba.
Tuba toothpaste.
Ooh. It's, for those who don't know, it's an Irish cittern. And it's got a relatively recent history, now probably about 50 years ago. You know, when I first started telling this story, it used to be 20 years ago, and then it was 30 years ago, and I was like almost 50 years ago. Some Irish musicians came across the Greek bouzouki, which looks something like this, but it has big bowl back. And they took it back to Ireland and started playing on the traditional tunes. And around the same time, an instrument maker named Stefan Osley, no, wrong guys, Stefan Sobel, was experimenting with an instrument called an English Renaissance Cittern. And those two forces came together, and we now have this relatively new traditional instrument called some people call it the Irish bouzouki, some people call it the cittern, but it's all kind of the same.
Oh, sure, why not? We're going to do two tunes because, as they say in Ireland, a bird never flew on one wing. So the first tune will be the... I like that. They say some other stuff, too. If you see me after the show, I could tell you those ones. We are in church. Although I must point out it's really a pleasure to be playing some good Catholic music in here inside in the Presbyterian Church.
Take that!
Yeah. I like to think I can walk tall in both camps myself, but anyhow, we're going to do the Irish version of Miss McLeod's, which is backwards and in the wrong key and has a bunch of extra notes, and you know, I don't know what happened to it to get it into that state, but that's where it is today. And then we're going to play another tune called Cap and Bell, which I quite like, and which David just heard. Me.
right, take it down.
Thank you. So Ms. McLeod came to North Carolina, and my God, did she get an extreme makeover. She got a new name, she got words. Everything shifted around, way more than when she went to Ireland. Phew, it was a long journey across the ocean. Before we play that version, I do want to say a little bit about the indigenous music to this region, the Southern old-time music, which includes both the ballads, folk songs, and these instrumental traditions. I think it's pretty obvious that the roots of this music goes back to Scotland, Ireland, and England, with one important addition, and that is the music of Africa, which obviously came here with slaves. And that difference really is what gives our music its real distinct character. In the instrumental music, especially with the use of the African banjo, our Southern music really has its own definable sound for sure. So we're going to go to, we're going to stay right here, in fact, and play a North Carolina version.
I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing?
I don't know. You know, beer would taste pretty good right away.
Oh, golly. Hey, who brought the flask, lads? See me after the show. Yeah. It's as good as a wink to a blind bat.
Bruce, there we go. Thank you. I'm going to play this piece of music on this instrument, and everybody knows this is really a tuba. No, obviously it's an Appalachian dulcimer. Someone mentioned, I think, that this had come from Scotland. In fact, it had come from Germany. And it came with the German settlers who came alongside the Scots-Irish settlers into the Piedmont. Rob here, well, I should say that its German name is, among other things, a Scheitholt.
Wait, what'd your man say?
How do you say? Well, let me say this. Mr. Rob Sharer here, my partner, is I don't know, at least a trilinguist, and he's certainly a germophone. Is that what they call you? A germophone?
There's a shot for that, you know.
Yeah.
Penicillin clears it right up.
So how do you say it?
I haven't got the faintest.
So I think it's called the Scheitholt. But what Rob did tell me was that it actually translates, and I didn't know this, to the word firewood. Ho, ho, ho.
No, that's just your dulcimer.
No. They are referring to the source material, not the end product.
They are, yeah.
All right. Anyway, here's an Appalachian version of Ms. McLeod's reel. Oh, excuse me, I should tell you, its new name now is Hop High Ladies. Hopefully we're something like in tune.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. I'll get this right. Did he ever go to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Did he ever go to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Did he ever go to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. Can your horse carry double, Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Can your horse carry double, Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Can your horse carry double, Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Did you ever go to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Did you ever go to meet Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe? Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Hop high, ladies, 3 in a row. Don't mind the weather if the wind don't blow.
Look at now.
I'll take that banjo. Jack turtle.
Take that.
Take that. Woo. Well, you know, along with the music, actually, so came Ms. McLeod to North Carolina. So came a boy named Jack, in the form of Jack Tales. Jack Tales, in the British tradition, can be traced back into actually into the 1300s, some of the earliest ones that we know about a boy named Jack. And in Scotland, sometimes he was called Jake or Jock. And in this story cycle about Jack, about a boy named Jack, well, you know, sometimes he's a trickster, mischievous. Sometimes he's an unlikely hero. Sometimes he's smart and wise. Sometimes he's foolish and naive. Sometimes he's just lucky. But he's always successful. A bit of a complicated character. Sounds like the rest of us, huh? And when Jack came to America, he became an Americanized farm boy hero. And in the United States, one of the primary keepers of Jack Tales it was and still is, the Hicks Harmon family of Beech Mountain, North Carolina. Some of you may have heard Ray Hicks. He died probably almost a decade ago now. He's a great North Carolina teller of Jack Tales. And his great-grandfather was Counsel Harmon. And one of my favorite lines about Counsel, who died in, I think it was 1896, it was said that he remained a famous storyteller long after he died. So this is, we'll have a little fun here. This is just kind of a fun story about a boy named Jack called Jack and the King's Daughter. You see, Jack had an uncle who lived a right good distance away from where Jack and his mama lived. And from time to time, Jack would make that long journey to go visit with his uncle. But before he could ever go, he'd have to spend about a week fixing up the place, doing the chores, bringing in the firewood, so Mama could be all alone. And every time that Jack made that long journey to go visit with his uncle, he would pass right by the king's house. And the king had a daughter, just about Jack's own age, and she was beautiful. Mm-mm. But there was a problem. You see, the king's daughter, she never laughed. In all her days, she never chortled or chuckled or giggled or guffawed. And so the king had issued a proclamation that if any man in the kingdom could make his daughter laugh, he could have her hand in marriage. Well, one day Jack was headed to his uncle's, and as he was passing by the king's house, the king's daughter was sitting out on that front porch, and she saw Jack coming along, and she called out, "Where are you headed, Jack?" And Jack replied, "Well, I'm headed to my uncle's cabin." And she said, "Hope you have a good time, Jack." Well, when Jack arrived, Jack's uncle was glad to see him, and Jack did have a good time. You see, Jack's uncle played the fiddle, and he had a neighbor who played the banjo. And every night after the sun went down, well, all the neighbors would gather up there at that house. Jack's uncle started playing that fiddle. Someone started playing the banjo. Everyone there danced to the music all night long. Swing your partner, do-si-do, swing her high, swing her low, into the center. What do? You swing her, she'll swing you. Well, Jack was having a great time. He had to go on home, but he had to help his mom with the chores. And after about a week or so, Jack's uncle said, "Jack, you fix up and you go on home today. But now to help you along, here's a little present. Here's big old darning needle. You take it home and learn how to sew your own overalls." And then Jack's uncle took a long piece of thread, put it through the eye of that needle, and handed it to Jack. Well, Jack thanked his uncle, And as he started walking home, he grabbed hold of the end of the thread, and he took that needle and he threw it back over his shoulder. So as he was walking along, that needle was wiggling and waggling there behind him. Well, Jack got down by the king's house, and the king's daughter saw Jack coming along. She called out, "You headed back, are you, Jack?" And Jack replied, "Yeah, I had an awful good time." "What's that you got there dangling behind your back, Jack?" "Oh, it's a big old darning needle my uncle gave me." "Law me," said the girl. "Jack, I never saw anyone carry a needle like that before. You just pin it through the front of your shirt." "Well, remember that next time," said Jack, and he headed on his way. Well, when Jack got home, he told his mom about what a good time he had, about all the music and the dancing, went back to working on his chores, and he did learn how to sew his own overalls. And sometime later, early one morning, Jack said, "Mama, can I go visit with Uncle?" Mama said, "Sure, Jack, you've been a good boy, you can go on." And so Jack spent the next week fixing up the place, doing the chores so Mama could be all alone, and he headed on his way. And as he got down by the king's house, the king's daughter saw Jack coming along, and she called out, "Where you headed, Jack?" Jack said, "Well, I'm headed to my uncle's cabin." She said, "Hope you have a good time, Jack." Well, when Jack arrived, Jack's uncle, still glad to see him, and Jack did have a good time. You see, this week they went several different places. And every night, Jack's uncle they'd spend one night person's house or another. And every night after that sun went down, well, Jack's uncle started playing the fiddle. Someone started playing the banjo. And everyone there danced to the music. All night long. Drop for the oyster, dive for the clam. Into the center, go hand in hand. All fall back, circle round, swing your partner around the town. Jack was having a great time. He hated to go on home, but he had to help his mom with the chores. And after about a week or so, Jack's uncle said, "Jack, you fix up and you go on home today. But now to help you along, here's a little present. Here's a sword. It's a sword my grandpappy gave me. It's from the Revolutionary War." Wow, well, Jack thanked his uncle and started walking home. And as he started walking home, he remembered what that king's daughter had said. So he took that sword and he pinned it through the front of his shirt. Got down by the king's house. The king's daughter saw Jack coming along. She called out, "You headed back, are you, Jack?" And Jack replied, "Yeah, I'm sure I had an awful good time." "What's that in your shirt, Jack?" "Oh, it's a sword my uncle gave me from the Revolutionary War." "Law me," said the girl. "Jack, I never saw anyone carry a sword like that. You done ruined your shirt. You should carry it on your shoulder." "I'll remember that next time," said Jack, and he headed on his way. Well, when Jack got home, he told his mom about what a good time he had, about all the music and the dancing, went back to working on his chores, and he had fun playing with that sword. But one day he got a little bored, and he said, "Mama, can I go visit with Uncle?" Mama said, "Sure, Jack, you can go. You've been a good boy." So Jack spent the next week fixing up the place so Mama could be all alone, and he headed on his way. Got down by the king's house. That king's daughter saw Jack coming along. She called out, "Where you headed, Jack?" And Jack replied, "I'm headed to my uncle's cabin." And she called out, "Hope you have a good time, Jack." Well, when Jack arrived, Jack's uncle, glad to see him, Jack did have a good time. This week, there was an even bigger gang up at that house. And every night after that sun went down, well, you know what happened. Jack's uncle started playing that fiddle. Someone started playing the banjo. And everyone there danced to the music. All night long, swing your partner, do-si-do, swing her high, do her low, into the center, what do? You swing her, she'll swing you. Well, Jack was having a great time. He hated to go on home, but after about a week or so, Jack's uncle said, "Jack, you fix up and you go on home today. But to help you along, here's a little present. Here's a colt, baby horse. You take her home and break her in for riding." Wow, well, Jack thanked his uncle and started walking home. And as he started walking home, he remembered what that king's daughter had said. And so he picked up that horse and put it on his shoulder. Got down by the king's house. The king's daughter saw Jack coming along. She called out, "You headed back, are you, Jack?" And Jack replied, "Yeah, I sure had an awful good time." "What's that on your shoulder, Jack?" "It's a horse." "Law me," said the girl. "Jack, I never saw anyone carry a horse before. You should be riding it." "I'll remember that next time," said Jack. And he headed on his way. Well, when Jack got home, he told his mom about what a good time he had, about all the music and the dancing. Went back to working on his chores, and he did break in and learn how to ride that horse. And it was some time later, early one morning, when Jack's mama said, Jack, you've been an awful good boy. Why don't you go on and visit with your uncle? Wow, well, sure, Mama, thank you. And so Jack spent the next week fixing up the place, doing the chores, bringing in the firewood, so Mama could be all alone, and he headed on his way. Got down by the king's house. That king's daughter saw Jack coming along, and she called out, where you headed, Jack? And Jack replied, I'm headed to my uncle's cabin. And she said, hope you have a good time. You're getting on, you're catching on there. Well, when Jack arrived, Jack's uncle, glad to see him, and Jack did have a good time. You see, this week, Jack's uncle took him hunting and fishing every day. And every night they'd go back up to that cabin. All the neighbors would gather up their house. Someone would start playing the fiddle, someone would start playing the banjo, and everyone there danced to the music. All night long, promenade around you go. Don't be fast, don't be slow. Into the center, what do? You swing her, just swing you. Well, Jack was having a great time. He hated to go on home. But after about a week or so, Jack's uncle said, Jack, you fix up, you go on home today. But now to help you along, here's a little present. Here's a heifer. You keep her well fed, you get plenty of milk for you and your mama. Well, Jack thanked his uncle and started walking home. And as he got down by the king's house, he remembered what that king's daughter had said about riding. And so he jumped up on the back of that cow. But somehow he landed facing backwards. And that cow didn't take kindly to Jack being on his back. That cow started bucking and jumping all around. And Jack, so as to not fall off, he grabbed hold of the cow's tail. And then Jack started hooting and hollering like a wild man. Yee-haw! Well, the king's daughter heard all this commotion. She looked up to see Jack riding backwards on a cow. And the cow's jumping and bucking all around. And Jack's holding onto the cow's tail, being flipped from one side of that cow to the other. And he's hooting and hollering like a crazy man. And she started laughing so hard you could hear her all over town. She just stood there laughing and clapping her hands about till the king came out. The king saw Jack riding a cow. He started laughing too. And then all the king's men filed out on that front porch, and they all stood around laughing at Jack as well. Well, it took him a while, but eventually the king's men were able to catch that wild cow and get Jack down off its back. And the king, true to his promise, took Jack into town and bought him a brand new suit. And then the king hitched up a fine pair of horses to a buggy, and he rode Jack and his daughter to the church. And there they were married. Well, later on that evening, Jack and his new bride made it on home to Jack's mama's house. And from time to time, Jack and his new bride make that long journey to go visit with Jack's uncle. And as far as anybody knows, they're all still out there dancing to the music of the fiddle and the banjo. Clap your hands to the beat and dance along in your seat. So in your partner, do-si-do, and listen to the music of the old banjo. Jack and the King's Daughter.
That's David DiGiuseppe.
You didn't bring enough hats for everyone.
Okay, I think we have time I think we have time for one more piece of music. Thanks to the Folk Society, Charlotte Folk Society, for inviting us to come here and share our music and our stories. Oh, is that the...
Yeah.
Oh, well, listen. I didn't realize that was going on. Okay, so here's the deal. Take out your wallet. Take out 5 or a 10 or a 20. Hang on to it. And then do that. And give us what's left. Okay? Is it a deal? Here's the other thing. If that didn't work for you, Rob has really high payments on his new Porsche.
You have no idea just how expensive those Matchbox cars are getting these days. It's scandalous. Toys R Us should hang their head in shame.
But seriously, I think as I was saying, thank you to all the members of the Folk Society, all the folks who work hard to put these shows on and to bring us tonight. Thank you all. I know there's a lot of you, so give them a big hand. And do remember to support them, to come to the shows and become members. I assume it's a membership organization. Join the organization if you haven't. I can tell you as a surviving folk musician, what's happening here is a very unique thing. There's not a lot of folk societies still left, and they really have an important place. So thank you for all you're doing. And thank you as an audience for coming tonight.
Thank you to the crazy people up in the balcony. Woo. Try not to go over the railing now.
So, and one last, I have to say this. Merchandise. It's only, how long till Christmas? We just got through the political ads. Now we're going to start getting Christmas ads. I'm glad I don't watch television.
Are there turkey ads?
Oh, that too.
I don't have a TV, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's a reason for that, by the way. It's all those turkey ads.
So, but there are CDs and music books downstairs with the merchandise. Rob has a CD. I have a CD. We don't have a CD as a duo, but we actually have a band with a third person, a drummer, who we didn't take tonight because he wasn't behaving.
Tell the truth. He spontaneously combusted on stage.
I hate it when he does that. But the band is called Crackdown, and it's not related to Bound for Carolina. It's actually a very cool band. We describe it as World Acousticana, and it's Celtic influence music, but we also bring in influences of Brazil and Paris, and it's a very cool CD, I have to say. His mother really likes it, so I know it's good.
Loves it.
But they're downstairs, so please check them out. And if there's any budding accordion players out there,
it's not too late to reconsider.
Really, there are some books I've written. You can check those out. It's okay. I'm used to it.
I tell you, long pauses, man. Avoid the long pauses. I'm in like a shot on a long pause, Dave.
Are we ready? Anyway, so this will be our good evening song to you, and I believe there's a jam session afterwards. Is that what I hear? Okay, great. Maybe we'll see you down there.
Bring your own toasts.
I'm telling you, this guy is so fast. Anyway, here's our theme song for the show. We'll sail through the air on the Queen of Sky, bound for Carolina. It's holler up, boys, and away she sails, off to seek her fortune. With the sky at her bow and the wind at her sail, bound for Carolina. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Gone, gone away. We'll sail through the air on the Queen of Sky, bound for Carolina. When the Queen of Sky stood in Glasgow town, off to seek her fortune, those ragged boys, they fit her down, bound for Carolina. Kegs of dried up salted beef and biscuits shaped like boulders, and an old one-legged parakeet they carried on their shoulder. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. I'm gone away. We'll sail through the air on the Queen of Sky, bound for Carolina. For 21 days we sailed the main, off to seek our fortune, till we got caught up in a hurricane, bound for Carolina. We rode those billows low and high, the passengers were wailing, and a great storm gust threw us up in the sky, above the storm clouds sailing. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Gone, gone away. We'll sail through the air on the Queen of Sky, bound for Carolina. Then the captain cried, "Clap on more sail, off to seek a fortune." And we got caught up in a comet's tail, bound for Carolina. We rode that comet around the moon, the passengers delighted, Then the first mate bellowed, there should be an American was sighted. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. I'm gonna weep. We'll sail through the air on the Queen of Sky, bound for Caroline.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. We're just kind of figuring, okay, what are we going to do now? Thanks very much.
What do you want to hear, Irish music or Scottish music? Irish? I'm not sure I know what that is, but it sounds interesting. Okay, show of hands for Scottish. Show of hands for Irish. As
Sorry.
usual.
This is democracy. We get to make the decision.
It's like...
That was a sham election.
I was going to say it was like Chicago politics and they stacked the ward. The petties.
Yeah. I think that'd be the Irish music. I think we're going to need...
I think we need this one.
What are you going to do?
I don't know. I was thinking about doing a little soft shoe.
Okay.
And telling a couple of one-liners.
You've been doing that all night.
Why change now?
That's not what they hired you to do. Maybe.
How do you know? Maybe I have a little separate little rider on my contract.
Is that accordion?
No. Okay. If I kick it, it would be on purpose. We didn't play any jigs tonight, did we?
Yeah, I did a couple.
Did we do?
No, that's a good idea.
Yeah, let's do some jigs.
Okay, we'll keep.
Do you know the dance floor is, well, it's a little tight.
And there's a rug on it, but that's okay.
Mind the pews now, mind the pews. Don't want any of those unsightly thigh bruises. Now then, let's play...
But feel free to kick it up a little bit, or clap along, or whatever. I mean, we're used to playing in bars, so this is...
Let's do Let's start in the key of D. Let's do a 4-part in D that you know. Okay. And then I'll shout out something interesting. It's called Quiz for Dave.
Everybody want my job?
This tune's called The Gold Ring. Well, hold on. Oh, I'll be happier with that. Okay, here we go. All right, thank you. Thank you, thank you.